Ibrahim A.S. on the other hand has settled now with Sarah, and they've come to this acceptance that, you know what, we're just not going to have kids. Ibrahim A.S. was 100 years old, around that age. Sarah, his wife, was 10 years younger than him. So that would make her about 90 years old. And they've accepted now that we're not going to have kids. They've settled. They're okay with it. She's barren. That's it. It's the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, obviously, Ibrahim lives a very long life. Historically speaking, Ibrahim A.S. outlived his wives. He outlived his children. He outlived many of his grandchildren. He resettled in Palestine, in Khalil. Okay? He got married again over there. He had 6 children and he's buried there. So if you were to put a timeline on Abraham's life, on Ibrahim's life, it's a very, very, very long life that he lived. Okay? Now, what happens in this situation now? As they've kind of settled and gotten used to this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ ضَيْفِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ الْمُكْرَمِينَ. The noble guests of Ibrahim come to visit him. Who are the noble guests of Ibrahim a.s.? They definitely included Jibreel. According to most of the scholars, it included Mikal and Malak al-Maut, the angel of death as well. So it's al-Muqassimati amra minus Israfil, because Israfil has another job to do. But a group of guests, some angels come to visit Ibrahim a.s. They don't announce themselves, they don't say that they're angels, but they just appear to be strangers, just walking through, wayfarers. Ibrahim a.s. sees them as they come. إِذْ دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ فَقَالُوا السَّلَامَ. They say salam to Ibrahim a.s. Ibrahim doesn't say, who are you? Right? Ibrahim a.s. says, سَلَامٌ قَوْمٌ مُنْكَرُونَ. He says, salamun, which according to Al-Baghawi is like if someone says to you, Assalamu alaikum, and you say, Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. He greeted them with an enthusiastic salam. Like, go ahead, come on in guys, have a seat. Right? It wasn't like, nowadays, you don't say salam to someone unless you know them, right? It's one of the signs of the Day of Judgment. And what's a greater sign of the Day of Judgment is New York, where you don't greet someone unless you know them, right? You can't even say, hi, how are you to someone unless you know them, okay? But salam is something that's taken away. Allah is showing us the adab of Ibrahim a.s. He tells these guests, come on in, tafaddalu, salamu alaikum. Have a seat, guys. فَرَاغَ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِ. He goes and he tells Sarah, we've got guests. فَجَاءَ بِعِزْرٍ سَمِينٍ. يعني جَاءَ يَحْمِلُهُ بِنَفْسِهِ. As the scholar said, he came carrying this huge meal, this huge roasted cow. Right? Cooked, done well, a huge portion. He puts it on the table. And, this is his generosity towards them. But what happens? The true definition of awkward silence. They just look at him. These angels cannot eat. They physically cannot eat. Even when they appear to be human beings, Allah has completely taken desire away from them, completely taken food and drink away from them. So what does Ibrahim a.s. do? In some cultures, the appropriate thing to do, there's some parts of the world where they actually put the food on the table and the hosts leave and they let you finish the food and come back so that you're not shy. And some cultures, primarily Arab Desi culture, they open your mouth and just force it down your throat, right? La tastahi, no takalluf, right? Just eat, right? And you actually have to hide, or you gotta eat at a really slow pace unless you want to eat 4 plates of maqloob or biryani, right? It's shameful if you don't do that, right? Ibrahim a.s., he has good adab, he has good manners. So he doesn't do that. He just qarrabahu ilayhim. He just pushes the tray closer to them. They still didn't touch the food. It's still an awkward silence. He says, Ala ta'kulun? Aren't you going to eat? Now in that situation, was there a conversation that took place? According to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, narrations from him and Sa'id ibn Jubayr and others, at that point the angels, in order to make an excuse for themselves, they said, La na'kulu shay illa bi thamani. Look, we don't eat things unless we pay for them. So Ibrahim said, fine, kulu wa addu thamana. Go ahead and eat it and then pay later. They said, what's the price? How much does it cost? He said that you start, Bismillah, in the name of Allah, and that you end in the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's an apparent way out, right? For Ibrahim a.s. that he made. So the angels now say nothing. At that point, what does Allah say? I mean, think about it. If you were in the place of Ibrahim a.s., you just served a generous meal and they're just kind of looking at you like, can't do anything about that, right? أَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً. At that point, Ibrahim a.s. became scared on the inside. Notice, فِي نَفْسِهِ. He didn't say anything. It was inside of him. At that point, the angel said, okay, fine. لا تخف. Don't be afraid. On top of that, بَشَّرُوهُ بِغُلَامٍ عَلِيمٍ. They gave him the glad tidings of a knowledgeable young son. This old man and his old wife. By the way, Allah has a knowledgeable young son that's on the way. This is something to take place in the future. In fact, many of the scholars say the angels were not going to give him the bushra at that time. They weren't going to give him the glad tidings at that time, but to put him to ease, بَشَّرُوهُ بِغُلَامٍ عَلِيمٍ. Okay? Now Sarah is listening in from the other room. Because she's getting scared too now, because these guys aren't doing anything. So they must be up to no good. As soon as they say that, what happens? أَقْبَلَتْ امْرَأَتُهُ فِي صَرَّةٍ فَصَكَّتْ وَجْهَهَا. She comes screaming hysterically, slapping her face. قالت عجوز عقيم. He's old. هذا بعلي شيخة. He can't have kids. I can't have kids. What are you talking about? How's this happening? You know, what's going on here? Now Jibreel alayhi salam is the one who's speaking now, because Jibreel is the one who gives the bushra of the child in the first place. So Jibreel always answers with one word first. كذلك. Look, it's just like that. And Al-Qurtubi says, because that's the tarbiyah of the malaika. That's how the angels were raised. They don't ask those types of questions. How is this happening? Allah decided it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. كذلك. Look, it's just going to happen that way. And they say to her that your Lord is Hakeemun Alim. He's most wise and most knowledgeable. Usually it's Alimun Hakim. It's most knowledgeable, most wise. But it's switched around because the scholars say she wasn't questioning the knowledge of Allah. She's questioning the wisdom of why this is happening now. Why now, after all these years, Hajar comes into the picture. Then she's left behind with Ismail. Why now? Look, that's the way it goes. Now notice, Ibrahim A.S. didn't do anything. Right? At the most, the narration says, he said, Alhamdulillah, he praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he thanked Allah. But there is no flipping out like, oh my God, I got the news of a kid. Yes, finally, this is happening. None of that. Nor is there, how is this happening? Why is this happening? He's watching his wife argue with Jibreel a.s. over why this is happening. Ibrahim is calm. And how calm is he? He notices something that you really wouldn't notice in a moment of shock like that. He says, yeah, but ma khatbukum ayyuhal mursalun. That's nice, but what are you angels really up to? Because Ibrahim recognized that if this was a bushra of a child, if this was the glad tidings of a child, it would have just been Jibreel. What are the angel of death? What's the angel of death doing here? And what's the other angel doing here? Why the other angels? Now Al-Qurtubi rahimahullah says something beautiful here. He actually noted why Ibrahim A.S. did not say anything or did not flip out and lose it. He says that Ibrahim A.S. ta'awwada ala al-ajab. He was used to strange things happening to him in life. You know those people that sit on roller coasters and nothing phases them? Right? They've been on every roller coaster in life anyway. Right? Ibrahim has been thrown into a fire and it didn't burn him. Right? He was to slaughter his son and his son turned into a ram. He's seen so much in his life that he has this tawakkul in Allah, this trust in Allah, that you know what? It is what it is. Alhamdulillah. And he was used to it. So he simply says, Ma khatbukum ayyuhal mursalun. Yeah, but what are you really up to? And they said, Inna ursidna ila qawmin mujrimeen. We have been sent to a transgressing people. We have been sent to the people of Lut alayhi salam. Lut, his nephew, the only person that believed in the Prophet that believed in the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu salam, aside from his wife, who went out, and subhanAllah, I mean, he's like Ali radiallahu anhu was when the Prophet ﷺ called out to his people and he said, I'll support you, Ya Rasulullah. Lut supported Ibrahim very early on, and he grew in his own ambitions, and he went out to do da'wah in another town nearby. So when Ibrahim heard that they were sent to the people of Lut, what did he do? Forget about the child right now. He started arguing with the angels on behalf of Lut alayhi salam, and they said, what? Look, we know Lut is there. We know the believers are there. They're going to be fine. It's those that have transgressed and those that have oppressed. A beautiful lesson we take from this, by the way, as well. Notice that on the way to destroy a nation, they just gave the glad tidings to Ibrahim alayhi salam of a child that's going to produce nations. One of the largest nations on earth, Bani Israel. Right? And in that, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, وَإِن تَتَوَلَّوْا يَسْتَبْدِلْ قَوْمًا غَيْرَكُمْ. If you turn away, Allah replaces you. The irony, they're on their way to do away with a nation, and they're giving the glad tidings of one child that's going to produce one of the largest nations on earth. SubhanAllah, a nation of prophets, a nation of anbiya, and so on and so forth.